Okay, hello there and welcome. It's time for another book review of the vintage variety. Today we're doing this one here, Restoree by McCaffrey. Now, as far as I know, this is the first book that she had published back in 1967. I've never read anything by McCaffrey before. Apart from when I was a teenager, I tried one of her Pern books, the Dragon books. I didn't really get on with it and I never finished it. In fact, I barely started it. I read this one, or decided to read this one, based on the cover. And it's an absolute vintage beauty, in my opinion. Okay, if we look at this cover in slightly more detail here, other than the fairly putrid green that's been used to festoon this cover, the kind of green actually that might issue from your nose on a particularly bad cold, it is actually a very pleasing image in a graphic style. We have this motif in the middle, this recurring circle situated around this young woman's eye. We have a couple of gentlemen there looking wistfully to either side. In fact, the one that's further away looks, I don't know, constipated, I would say. But anyway, it reminded me in a way of perhaps an alternate reality in which this was a film, perhaps a science fiction film in the 60s that we'd never heard of. I like that kind of thing. Kind of gives you a jolt. But anyway, cover aside, let's have a look at the inside of mine. So I always like to have a little gander at the copy that I've got. Mine is a 1970 print, so 3 years after original publication. And it's in pretty good condition. In fact, it was in better condition, but I took it on a flight to Poland recently, and my water bottle went nuts because of the air pressure and completely soaked it. But it's still in serviceable condition. I'm just going to give it a quick sniff, see what it smells like. It's got that kind of musty, damp smell, but the overpowering aroma is one of wood. That will come as no surprise to my regular viewers. Most books tend to smell of wood. So, aside from the cover being quite pleasing to me, at least, the premise of the story really got me. In fact, the blurb was enough to get me. About potentially a young woman who's gone through some kind of traumatic experience, kind of rebuilt. She's been rebuilt in a very visceral sense, almost as though she's died and been brought back to life. She finds herself on this alien world. Now that for me is enough to get me into a book. I love the kind of stories, kind of portals, fantasy or portal science fiction, taking someone from our world or our time and transporting them to another place. So yes, I was really looking forward to this. Things didn't go to plan though. Very quickly the story didn't really go the way I wanted it to, but there we are. So I'll do a very, very short synopsis of what the book's generally about. So this woman, she's from New York originally. She's having a walk through Central Park in the 1960s, I presume. She works for an advertising agency and works in their library. Before the internet, of course. A strange ship appears and all of a sudden she's zapped away. Now, she wakes up in this other world, having vague memories of something horrific happening to her. And she seems to be employed now as a nurse looking after one particular man who appears to be totally uncommunicative, walking around like a zombie. She later discovers that she is actually now in a mental institution on an alien world. So this man she's looking after, completely zombified. The people that are running this institute are pretty evil, basically. This young woman, who's called Sarah, from New York originally, regularly gets beaten, and there's always an implicit threat that she might be raped at any moment. A really bleak beginning. And I really quite enjoyed that. I thought, well, this is absolutely horrible, a horrible place to be. Spoiler, very early one, they manage to escape. So she realizes that the man she's looking after is actually someone quite important, and he's being drugged by some nefarious political player. So she decides to wean him off these drugs that are being given to him in his food. So she stops eating her food and gives a little bit to him, and eventually he comes out of his stupor. Together they escape this place, and a mini adventure ensues where they're trying to flee away from this place. Eventually they get to the kingdom where Harlan, this is the gentleman, he's called Harlan, is from, and from there various political toing and froings seem to go about. There's also the constant threat of these aliens, the Mill, I think they're called. They're the ones that were originally responsible for abducting Sarah. Okay, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, without giving away anything that happens later on. Now, I'm going to tell you everything I didn't like about it, because there's very little that I actually did like. So, let's begin. So, apart from the very beginning and the mildly interesting adventure that ensues once they've escaped this mental institution, this very quickly becomes a kind of pretext. The whole thing is a pretext for a romance. I didn't realise this book was going to be like this, but there'll be a cover, either now or a bit later, that illustrates that fact quite well. This cover it didn't give me any clues as to where it was going, and I'm not really into that kind of thing. Now, this young woman, Sarah, she's an intelligent woman. She's forthright. She's quite strong mentally. She's quite brave, but she goes weak at the knees the moment she's left alone with Harlan aboard this fishing boat that they eventually sail away from this island on. Now, Harlan is a very, very masculine man. I wouldn't say he's brutish, but let's just say he's fairly possessive and very quickly wishes to claim Sarah as his wife or mate or whatever you want to call it. She just goes along with this quite merrily, totally disregarding any kind of feminist ideals she might have been harbouring beforehand. The other annoying thing is that a consequence of her being remade, being restored, shall we say, by these aliens. Well, no, the aliens have initially got her as food, so they eat people, basically, these Mill. This Mill ship at some point was captured, and Sarah, having been skinned alive, is restored. So that's why it's called Restoree. She's been given new skin in a golden hue. She had a hook nose before, a kind of a nose she never liked growing up, and they fixed that and given her a really pretty one. Her skin's golden. She looks lovely now, and she absolutely loves this transformation that's happened. What the hell's that all about? I mean, if that's not wish fulfillment for a young woman who doesn't really like the way she looks, for her to be remade by aliens, I absolutely hated that. She also mentions to us, the reader, that she is actually still a virgin. Possibly, it seems to be because she didn't actually look very nice, her nose and all of that. So she's quite enamoured by the prospect of being, shagged by this Harlan type. All the way through, that's something that's played about, whether or not she will get to bed this Harlan. I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm sorry. This is romance within the guise of science fiction. Science fiction is just the kind of setting for it, and that does nothing for me whatsoever. Unfortunately, this gives me a bad view of what Anne McCaffrey's work's like, but I've looked at some other reviews of her work, and apparently this is completely different to what comes later. So this is a very early novel. Perhaps she was fulfilling the wishes of the publisher at the time. Yes, we love science fiction, but make it a romance. Perhaps it was that kind of scenario. I don't know. So following on from that, the whole story is told in the first person. She's narrating what she's experiencing of this strange new world and the various perils that she encounters along the way. This very soon after the romantic liaisons are finished, although that goes on all the way through. It's all about a power struggle. So Harlan is the regent. So he's a kind of de facto king for this young boy who's not quite old enough yet to resume warlord. Yes, warlord, not kings. And so that's why he was kind of poisoned to get him out of the mix. So after that, it's all about who does that, who did that, why did they do that? Let's overthrow this evil person. There's a lot of ambivalent characters in here. Someone that you think's evil isn't evil, or not entirely as evil as you thought. There's also a bewildering number of characters. These names are thrown at you willy-nilly. There's absolutely, well, hardly any characterization given to these people. So when they're mentioned here, I'm thinking, who the hell is that? Oh yeah, I recognize the name, but who are they? All that rubbish. So that's another thing I didn't like. The problem, of course, with it being narrated by Sarah is that to actually get into any of the exciting parts, you would have to always be there. And of course, that isn't always going to happen. So there's the big battle, if you will, towards the end. Not giving anything away about this, but it all happens out in space. Sarah watches the whole thing on a bloody screen. Just a kind of map showing dots. So anything that's mildly interesting or exciting happens a long way away from Sarah, at least. And because we are the viewer alongside her, we don't really get to see it either. So aside from all the political struggles and all of that, aside from Harlan, Willie, Dicker or won't he, there's a fairly pointless thing going in the background that's, by all accounts, world-ending events could happen. You never feel any of that. The mill, these alien buggers, they could be really interesting, and they sound horrific the way they skin people alive. You'd never see them. So anyway, I think I've probably said enough that I don't like. The only thing I probably liked was the fact that the sky was green and her skin was golden. That's it. Other than that, I would not recommend this book personally. I looked on Amazon reviews just to have a look to see if people liked it. Most people seem to like it, although the ones that gave it 1 star and 2 stars, they thought the same as me. So the points I've raised were also raised by them. I don't know. I guess if you're a fan of her work, you'll look more fondly on her first foray into writing. Also, perhaps if you read the book as a young woman, perhaps you would have got something from it. You would have appreciated her forthrightness, her intelligence, and perhaps forgave the slightly more dewy-eyed side of her personality when she's falling for Harlan. Who knows? But yeah, a lot of people like it. I didn't. So there. Right, let's get it down and give this book a damn good thrashing. As you can imagine, it's not going to score too highly. I often give books that I don't like 2 stars. This one's only going to get 1 of them. And you know what happens to those kind of books. We give them the old hero. I gave that a particularly big knock and it's exploded, never to be read again. Please let me know if you've read it and you liked it. And if you did, explain to me perhaps why you liked it and why I could be wrong. Perhaps I'm wrong, but personally, for me, I would never read a book like that again unwittingly. If I had seen the cover with a slightly more romantic coupling on the front, I would have given it the old heave-ho before I'd even read it. And that's a fact. Anyway, right, let's leave it there. Thank you for watching my review, and hopefully I'll see you next week for maybe a book haul. Who knows? I've got a load of books ready to be sniffed and perused over. 60 of them, actually. I'm trying to work out how to do it, because normally I do them in batches of 10. So yeah, I'll split it up into a few other episodes. But anyway, let's leave it there. Thank you for watching, and cheerio.